There's no reason why that couldn't be your story.
You don't have an expiration date.
Oh, I love that.
The actual pages. Like, that's all that matters at the end of the day.
This is the Authors and Agents Podcast. All right, Travis, I'm super excited to have you here. I'm really excited to hear about your novel, Strong Like You. So can you go ahead and tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Strong Like You follows, it's like a mashup of a sports story and a crime story. It follows a 15-year-old Walker Lauderdale, who's like the star linebacker on his football team. And his dad goes missing in the Ozarks where he lives. And everyone sort of writes his dad off because he's not a very good person. He's kind of known as a troublemaker, a drug dealer, but Walker doesn't think that way of his father, and he refuses to give up on his father, so he sort of embarks on a quest across the Ozarks to find his dad.
I love it. I mean, you had me sold at a mashup between football and crime story because that's everything I love in the world. Well, I'm really excited for this to come out. So this comes out March 12th, so everyone pre-order it or go get it, the day it comes out. But tell me a little bit about your journey to this point to having this book come out. How has that looked for you?
Yeah, it's been a long road. I would say I got really serious about writing. I've always wanted to publish a book and to be a writer. And that led me into journalism in 2012, just because I wanted to write professionally. But I got serious about trying to get a fiction book published. I think it was around 2017. And I got really dedicated to hitting my word count goals and querying agents. And in 2020, I got an agent for a different book. And in 2022, we sold Strong Like You, and I wrote Strong Like You. It was my 13th manuscript. And I wrote it in that interim of getting an agent in 2022 when it sold.
Okay.
So it's been a long journey with a lot of rejection.
That is the key, right? It is a lot of rejection to get to this point. But, I think it's awesome that you kind of took, maybe what some might call a detour into journalism, but I'm sure that's definitely helped inform your writing as a fiction author and given you great experience. So tell me a little bit about how you approached querying. What were like your strategies going into that, if you had any?
I did. I tried to research the agents a little bit and know kind of what they were interested in, but also I tried to make sure that I didn't get deflated by rejections. And instead of somebody said it this way one time, so I'm not the author of this idea, but a rejection is a invitation to submit elsewhere. So really, it was just I'm never going to give up on this. Like, you can tell me no 100 times and I'm going to submit to 101 people. So it was just a never giving up was the main strategy.
That is a great strategy. It's easier said than done, right? Because those rejections, once you get so many of them, are really hard. But I think that's a good mindset. Of course, that like a rejection from someone is just, I like to think of it as less as a rejection and more of a pass, because I've heard from so many agents, that even if they are having to pass, there could be things they really love about the story. They don't have the time to tell you or give you feedback. So it's hard. It's like you've got to keep yourself in this mindset of not taking it personally, right? Because it is a business, and just being like, okay, now I get to move on to somebody else.
Yeah. And, with agents, it wasn't that difficult for me because I knew that they were getting, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And sometimes you just didn't grab their attention the way another, for whatever reason, or they're just having a bad day that day. So they just skip it or whatever,
Right.
And I totally get that. But what really was harder for me was when we got into submission and with publishing houses, and I would get these letters that said stuff like, we really love this, but no. And like, that was worse. To me, that was worse than like just a form letter. Like, I was, because it made me, but I kept trying to remind myself, that means I'm writing at a professional level. So, and to keep going. But for whatever reason, that hurt like my heart a whole lot more. Like it was like, you're so close, but not there.
Yeah, it was like we love it, but not enough, right?
Yeah.
That hurts a lot.
Yeah.
Well, besides your, great advice of just keep pushing through the rejection, what would your maybe like top tip be for writers who are in the querying trenches right now?
I mean, as far as like, I would go back and look at your writing, because the number one thing that I had to really learn to do was to not get precious about my writing. Like the realization that there's a million people out there that can write just as well as I can, and like nobody's gonna like pluck you out of the obscurity of where you live and make you into an author. And you have to get you can't get hung up on like, I mean, how many authors do you know or writers do you know that if they send you something for a critique and you send back like, I really didn't like this part, and they get so butthurt and upset that you didn't like that part? Like, quit being precious and get serious about getting better, because the more you get hung up on like getting your feelings hurt, that's just a roadblock between you and success.
I think that's really good advice. I think learning how to take the criticism and feedback and move forward with it is crucial. And as a writer, you can practice that, right? By getting critique partners and all of that, because agents really want to see people who can take good feedback and work with them, because your book is not going to be the kind of unicorn book where they're like, yes, this is amazing, we need to make no changes, let's keep going. Right?
Yeah. And I was lucky because I had a newsroom to teach me how to not be precious about my writing. So, journalists are notoriously mean when they critique each other's work. So had to get thick skin pretty quick. And then plus, if I made a mistake in print, I was getting emails from like angry moms, like, because I spelled their kid's name wrong in a story or whatever. So I just had to get thick skin.
Well, I think, yeah, being a journalist really helped you on that one, gave you a leg up in the querying process.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is the hardest part of writing for you? And then what's the hardest part of being an author?
The hardest part, I think, for me is always the editing process. That's when it starts to really feel like work. Yeah. Whenever I'm brainstorming and whenever I'm drafting, that's just playing. That's fun. I definitely have a way that I do that, but it's just fun, and like exploring the possibilities of what the story might be is fun. And then whenever you are in the editing phase and you've got a clear, concise like goal of what this manuscript needs to look like, that's when it becomes nitty gritty, and that's when it becomes work. And I still enjoy that work, but it is work. That I would say is probably the hardest part of the writing process for me.
That is a super hard process.
Yeah. I can't remember what your other question was. I'm sorry.
Well, being a writer, being an author, different hats we have to put on. So what's the hardest part of being an author so far? You're not quite to publication date yet, but I know you've had, pre-reviews and all that stuff coming in. So what's the hardest part so far?
Yeah. Like I said, I'm pretty used to being critiqued. So, and all of my trade reviews have been pretty good. So I don't have a lot of complaints there. But I would say imposter syndrome is a little bit difficult, like feeling like you don't belong in the room. Especially, I'm in a Slack group with a bunch of other 2024 debuts, and they're also brilliant and awesome. And some of them are blowing up and like being New York Times bestsellers and things. And, you're proud of them and excited for them, but also jealous, and also feel like that imposter syndrome is a real thing.
It is. And, it's like you said, you're excited for them and you love it for them, but you're also like, I want that for me too. It's just like the constant comparison game, and the imposter syndrome. Yeah, is definitely a hard part.
And everyone says don't get caught up in that, but I think everyone does, at least at first, until they get used to it. And they always say, like, don't check your Goodreads reviews and all that stuff. But I think all of us do at first because it's new. So, but maybe one day I can move on from that and be a stronger person.
You are a strong person. You are. So let's flip this question and tell me the best part. So the best part of writing for you and the best part of being an author.
The best part? Oh man. The best thing I've done as an author so far is I participated in World Read Aloud Day.
Oh, that's fun.
And so I got to read to students in California and students in the Bronx and answer questions, and they all had such like wonder. It was, for me, it was like the first moment, even like seeing my Kirkus review and my school library journal review, still that didn't really land with me as like the moment I felt like an author. The moment I felt like an author was answering questions to kids.
Yeah.
About my book, and they had such wonderful, smart questions, and then also some really hilarious questions. One kid asked me if I knew Stephen King. I was like, "Oh yeah, we're buds." No. That was my favorite thing about being an author. My favorite thing about being a writer is just the act of it. Like I hear other writers sometimes say stuff like, "I love having written, but I don't like writing." I don't know if you've ever heard that concept of like they like having accomplished the task of writing, but the act of it is so difficult, that it's not fun or whatever. But I'm not like, I love to be in front of my computer and writing. Like that's if I'm in a good flow state and the words are coming, and that's one of my very happiest places to be. So just the act of writing itself is my favorite thing about being a writer.
I totally agree with you there, because I mean, I agree with you on both parts, because revisions feel nitty gritty and hard to me, but I love the actual act of like drafting and writing is just so fun, and to feel excited about it is the best. So to talk about revisions really quick and the nitty gritty, your not so favorite part, tell me what your revision process looks like. So obviously now you've got your agent and your editor who help you incredibly, right? But before you get to them and to giving your manuscript to them, could you tell me kind of what you do on your own to get your stuff ready?
Yeah. So I usually will try to think about the audience that I'm not a pantser. I used to be, but what I kind of found is that pantsing ended up being long form outlining. So, and I would end up with a manuscript that was so incomprehensible that I didn't know how to fix it.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot easier to look at a scene that's like one sentence jotted down on a note card and be like, that's not working, than it is to look at 10,000 words and figure out where it's not working.
Yeah.
So I definitely start with an outline. And I usually start with trying to think of my audience and think about what themes I'm going to be talking about in this story, and everything grows out of that. So like Strong Like You is about a kid whose dad is not the greatest example of what it means to be strong. Mm-hmm. But the kid thinks that because he's raised that way, he thinks it is. He thinks that's how you should be strong, and that's how you should be a man. And it really takes on toxic masculinity in that way. But so when I started writing Strong Like You, that's what came first, was thinking about that theme of strength, and building it up from there. And then I just beat it out. I come up with all the beats. I beat it out. It's a weird way to say it, but
writers understand what you're saying. Don't worry.
Yeah. And then once I had the characters and their flaws, and it's all turning around that theme. It all has to turn around that theme for me. I can then do the beat sheet, and then from there I just break it down scene by scene. And then once I have that, I know where the story's going, and I can draft it without really having any kind of, because writer's block is really just idea block. So if you've already got the idea down, you're not going to struggle with getting the words down. And then after that comes that's all still the fun the fun part. After that comes, usually I let it sit for a few weeks, and then I go back and read it through, and I write down on a separate note piece of paper all the little things that I feel like I need to address, the big developmental things that I need to address. And I usually just make line edits as I go of fixing sentences and stuff like that. And then it's going back and making those edits. And then from there, I might give it to beta readers. I used to have some beta readers that were really good about getting back pretty quickly, but a lot of the people that are in my circle here don't understand story in the way that I really need them to. They'll just say something sort of nebulous, like, "Oh, this didn't work for me," and it's like, yeah, but what's that mean for me? So often I'll just give it to my agent at that point, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, so great that you've got an agent and editor now, right? And that kind of can, they give you the feedback, and they're looking at it with the eyes that you need. I love your comment about pantsing, because when I first got serious about writing, I was the same way. I was like, I'm going to pants everything because it's fun and exciting, and the characters are going to tell me what I want to do. But then I was like, what did I do? 40,000 words in, and I need to cut half of it, right? It is like, it's, like a zero draft or whatever they say, like it's like experimenting with your story. So I love that you outline and think it through. It definitely helps the process, right? It makes it a little simpler.
Yeah, and I mean, if there's people that do it the other way and it works for them, and that's great, but for me, like, I would just get lost in the weeds. I always would say my subconscious will lead me to ruin. Like, if I follow like the rabbit down through the woods, it's going to jump into a pit and I'm going to die in the pit. So it's just way better for me to think it through and know where I'm going.
I agree with you. Yeah. My pantsing strategies definitely got me stuck in some serious holes back in the day. And so now I'm like, I am not the person who outlines like hardcore. Like, I know some writers who have, a 60-page outline, and it is like as detailed as possibly can be. That's not me, but it's like, I have given up most of my pantsing.
No, I'm with you on that too. My beat sheet and my scenes are relatively vague on purpose, so I can still play when I'm writing it. So I still get kind of the feeling of pantsing, but without going. It makes sure the bones are there. Yes, the bones of the story are correct.
Yes. So we've got to keep it fun. Part of me, which it sounds so silly to say out loud, but part of me is like, if I know what's going to happen fully, it's just like not fun to write. I need a little bit of mystery as I'm going into it.
And the characters can talk to you, and I think it's okay to let them to a certain degree, as long as they're not. And sometimes they tell you to go off the beaten path, and sometimes it works. But you just gotta think it through and make sure you're not going, like I said, into the pit.
Yes, we do not want to get stuck in the pit. So on just a topic about you, Travis, can you tell me something your readers wouldn't know about you?
I wrote a football story, so that might lead you to think I'm a certain type of guy. But I'm actually a giant nerd with a bunch of Ninja Turtle action figures in my office, and big comic book guy, and grew up on Lord of the Rings, and I think that might surprise some folks given what my book is about.
Do you like football at all, or was that just?
Okay. Yeah. I do like football.
Okay, because you can be like into those things that you're into and love football. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I, not in this book, but in some other manuscripts I wrote that I explored, is because I think kids especially, they get trapped thinking that they can only be one thing. Like, you can only be a jock, or you can only be smart, and it's like, you can do both. Like, you're not a D&D character that has only like a certain number of skill points to spend. Right. You can spend infinite skill points getting as good at as many things as you have time for.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, my son, he's almost 10. He loves football, and he would play football like all year round if we let him. But I'm like, it's good to play a bunch of different sports, to be in a bunch of different things, and, have a lot of different interests because, kids don't need to be too focused on things. And like you said, that helps them be a little bit more well-rounded.
Yeah. And in Strong Like You, football is kind of a metaphor as well for that central theme that we were talking about. Strength, because football is like the machoist of the sports, I think. But it's written from a place of loving football. Like, you can critique something while still loving it.
Yes.
And I think that's important too, because we see way too many critiques of things from people who hate what they're critiquing. And that just makes people who are on, it makes a gap between two sides of a disagreement. But if you can close that gap by not yelling at the people, that, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
So hopefully my book can serve as that, because like it's sort of I mentioned that it takes on toxic masculinity, but I'm so hesitant to use that word because I know that the people who would benefit from reading it the most won't read it if they hear that phrase, because they're so against that idea. But if they read the book, by the time they get to the end, they'll be like, I agree with this. And they will have, without realizing it, admitted that toxic masculinity is real. So it's like a co-op, a coercive thing.
Right. You're luring them in with the football
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, but there's love for football in it too. Like I love football, and I hope that comes across in the story.
Oh, that's awesome. Football is the best. I'm still recovering from yesterday. It didn't go the way we wanted. It didn't go the way we wanted.
It didn't for us either. My wife's a huge 49ers fan.
Yeah, we were really upset. My son, who's 10, is the only Chiefs fan in the house, and he's like, I feel really bad for Mom right now. The team lost, but yet he was like jumping and screaming all over the house. It's okay. We're gonna recover. We're gonna recover. So, Travis, I just have a couple questions for you left. They're fun. They're not hard. I'd love to know, how many bookshelves do you have in your house? Not just yours, maybe everybody's.
A lot.
I
Let's see here. Our fireplace has built-in bookshelves.
Ooh, nice.
So there's one. I have 2 in the den. I have 1 behind me in my work office here. I have 1 in the bedroom.
5.
1 in each kid's room, so that's 3 more rooms. So whatever that added up to.
So 8. That's a lot of bookshelves. I love it. Bookshelves are the best. My last question is not hard, although it sounds hard. I'd love to know what your favorite book is right now. Not of all time, not everything you've read in your life, just something you've read recently that you think other people should read.
Yeah. I recently read Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, and it was absolutely brilliant. In fact, it was one of those books, and I'd already written Strong Like You at this point, but there's some similarities between the two, in that they're both very voicey and follow a rural poor kid trapped up in drugs and stuff. And it was one of those books that I read and just thought that it was so genius that I was jealous of it. It was like, I don't know. It's just, she's just a master. She's just a master. And it's a must-read book.
Oh, I love that. I love books that you read and you're like, I'm jealous I'm not this writer and that I didn't write this exact story. Those are the best. Yeah. Well, Travis, I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for Strong Like You to be out to the world and for the books that you've yet to write and that are going to come out. So thanks for joining me and letting me pick your brain a little bit.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.